Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really specific and honestly pretty intense theological revelation. What makes this particular source material so unique is its strict reliance on direct statements attributed to the Lord. It uses these claimed divine words to completely challenge modern church culture and even our everyday entertainment choices.
So, can Christian entertainment actually lead you away from God? It's a super provocative thought, isn't it? Our source immediately hooks us with this core conflict, putting forth the really bold claim that what so many of us consider safe, Christianized media is actually a spiritual trap. The argument here is that this isn't just harmless entertainment. It's framed as a highly calculated deception designed specifically to keep people off the narrow path.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, the alternative route deception.
Okay, so the perspective argues that when a person tries to leave the broad way, meaning a life of sin, Satan doesn't necessarily tempt them to stay with obvious, blatantly evil things. Instead, he provides what the source calls alternative routes. And an alternative route is literally just keeping a worldly concept, but slapping a Christian label on it. The whole premise is that merely attaching the name of Jesus onto secular-style entertainment, like rap music for instance, does absolutely nothing to change its worldly nature. According to the source, it keeps the person headed toward the exact same destructive destination without them even realizing it.
Move right along to Section 2, the Lord's verdict on music.
Now, the entire foundation of this argument rests on a claimed direct revelation specifically regarding music. According to the testimony, when discussing the infiltration of worldly things into the church, the Lord specifically called out Christian rap and rock, asking this exact question: have you ever heard the angels rapping? This is presented in the source not as some abstract theological debate, but as a direct, irrefutable question from God himself, completely challenging the premise that this type of music can be used for his glory.
And the reported divine verdict continues with this: I'm a great king. How can you dare to bring that music to me? This really illustrates the source's absolute belief that God completely rejects this style of music. It's viewed as a matter of immense disrespect to a sovereign king. The perspective here heavily emphasizes that Satan tricking people into bringing the world into the church under the guise of Christian music is a totally deliberate strategy to lead them away from God.
So, what's the rationale behind this really strict verdict? Well, the source argues that simply mentioning Jesus doesn't magically erase a worldly lifestyle. These alternative routes, these Christianized genres of music, they still promote the world. Sure, worldly musicians and actors might occasionally mention that they're Christians, but the argument suggests their actual day-to-day lifestyle denies him. And so the trap is that when a Christian consumes this media, they're deceived into thinking they can just name-drop Jesus while maintaining a lifestyle that looks exactly like the rest of the world.
That brings us to Section 3, the illusion of Christian movies.
When we compare worldly media with Christianized media, the source's argument is that they are fundamentally the exact same concept. Whether it's a secular romance novel or a Christian romance novel, the core themes, the emotional triggers, the glorification of earthly desires, they all remain identical. The only difference is the label on the cover. This view basically suggests that Satan just puts a different face on the very same things to keep your mind completely focused on the world, instead on God. According to the material, this deception functions by essentially brainwashing viewers through a few distinct methods. First, these movies glorify worldly concepts. Second, they promote a double life where characters drink, smoke, and go clubbing, but, occasionally mention God. Third, they just make sin look normal, and ultimately, they fail to glorify Jesus entirely. The speaker stresses that you literally cannot glorify Jesus and Satan at the same time. True Christian media, they argue, must make you want to seek God with all your heart, not just sit back and desire a worldly romance or lifestyle.
Let's look at Section 4, when light becomes darkness. If the light that is in you is darkness, then how dark is that darkness? This is a profoundly heavy scriptural truth from Jesus, and it's applied here to illustrate the severe gravity of spiritual blindness within the modern church. The point is, when things of the world are brought into the church and falsely labeled as light or Christian, it creates a darkness that is incredibly difficult to escape, mostly because the person doesn't even realize they're in the dark to begin with. To put that into perspective, the source views this deception as far, far worse than just regular secular entertainment.
Think about it. A secular person on the broad way knows they're in the dark. They know what they are consuming has nothing to do with God. And because of that self-awareness, they might actually seek the light one day. But the deceived Christian, they are walking that exact same broad way, but they genuinely think they are in the light. They are completely blind to the darkness just because the media has a Christian label slapped on it. Because of this, the alternative route is considered a much more dangerous path.
Finally, Section 5. Seeking true transformation.
So how do you actually escape this alternative route? Well, the source prescribes a very direct 3-step process for genuine change. First, go to Jesus in serious prayer. Second, ask him to actually kill the sinful desire, not to replace it with a slightly better, Christianized version, but to kill it completely. And third, allow Jesus to fill the void. The speaker actually references their own personal victory here, noting that trying to just quit secular music on their own failed over and over again. It was only through intense prayer and seeking Jesus that the actual desire was completely removed and replaced by God.
Redeem the time because the days are evil. There is a massive, absolutely crucial sense of urgency applied to this entire message. The source emphasizes that we are living in very dark times where Satan is incredibly cunning. Meaning right now is not the time to sit back, relax, and waste hours on worldly movies or novels, even if they claim to be Christian. It's framed as a critical time to abandon those sinful fantasies entirely and seek the Lord with all your heart and the Spirit.
So, are you seeking a true transformation or just an alternative route? This question really challenges every viewer to take a hard look at their media consumption and their own spiritual walk. Are your desires actually being crucified and transformed by the Lord? Or have you simply accepted a cunningly relabeled alternative? It's a heavy question for sure, and one that leaves us with a lot to reflect on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep seeking understanding.